and this breathing problem, it triggered the release of my soul from my body, my consciousness, my soul, my core being, whatever it is that I really am, that left my body. And I could watch as my body fell to the ground. Like I literally saw my body fall to the ground. And I was just kind of floating there. And a couple of things really stood out right away. One was that obviously I'm not this physical body. Like that was just very clear. And the flow of time just felt differently. Like there was a fundamental difference to how time works, and I could literally feel that. I can't really explain it other than to say that time is different than how we perceive it here on Earth.
This show is sponsored by shopveteran.ca and the Canadian Legacy Project. Are you a veteran who owns a business? If so, register your business for free on shopveteran.ca, or if you would like to support veteran-owned businesses, be sure to make shopveteran.ca your first-stop shop. Thanks, everybody. Hello, all you beautiful souls. Thank you so much for joining me for a wonderful edition of Operation Tango Romeo, the Trauma Recovery Podcast for veterans, first responders, and their families. Today is only the second time that I've had somebody on the show to talk about NDEs. NDEs are such a fascinating topic to me, near-death experiences. When I really started getting into it is when I knew my dad was on the bubble for the end of his life. And I just needed something to put my mind in the right spot, that this is not all there is, that there is something after, and the thing that is after is good. Just wanted to know or feel that my dad was going to be okay. It helped me through the grieving process when he passed away 3 years ago. And now my mom's on the bubble, I think. We'll see. But either way, when our loved ones are gone, it is helpful. Whether it's true or not is another thing entirely. It doesn't matter to me if it's true or not. I believe it's true. I do. Got baptized into Christianity in December, and that is also helpful to me. If I'm wrong, and if everything I believe is wrong, I'll never know it. So in the meantime, if it is helpful, then why not? Why not? It's whatever works. It's whatever brings you comfort and whatever is helpful. And there's certainly nothing destructive about it. But I reached out after listening to the coolest NDE story that I've ever heard. And I've listened to a lot of them. I reached out to this fella, Aaron Green, and there was something in his story that resonated with some thoughts that are in my head. And I thought, oh my God, I got to talk to this guy. And we're going to do this in a way that I've never done it before. It's usually a back and forth conversation, and there's going to be a bit of that at some point. But I just want Aaron to share his story with you. And he's been so gracious in agreeing to do that. So thank you for joining me. Please watch the whole thing and throw your comments in. I want to know what you think. And do these NDE videos, these stories of near-death experiences, do you also find catharsis in them? I want to know. I want to hear what you have to say. So without any further ado, Aaron Green, brother, thank you so much for joining me today.
All right. Well, thank you, Mark. Thanks for having me on as a guest. I appreciate it. So before I get into my experience, I'll just share a tiny bit of background about myself. I was born in Durham, North Carolina. And when I was 2, I moved up to Virginia. I currently work as a electrical engineer at Newport News Shipbuilding. They make all of the country's aircraft carriers and about half of the submarines. I'm married with 3 kids, just live a normal suburban life, going to work, doing my thing.
Being an engineer, have you ever been an atheist?
No, I don't think I was ever an atheist. So my parents raised me in a Catholic church. And so I was Catholic for a while, and then I basically considered myself a non-denominational Christian for a while. But so, as a kid, back in the late 70s, early 80s, it was before, computers and color televisions, all this stuff. Mainly we just ran around the neighborhood and played with each other. So that's pretty much what I did as a kid for fun, just play with the other kids. And one day, I was in a neighbor's backyard playing with my brother and maybe 4 or 5 other friends. And something happened that I don't understand, but I developed a breathing problem. I couldn't breathe no matter what I did. And I realized this was becoming pretty serious because I just couldn't get air into my lungs no matter how much I tried. So I tried to start going home. I was going to see if I could get help from my parents, and I got maybe 20 feet away from my friends, and this breathing problem, it triggered the release of my soul from my body, my consciousness, my soul, my core being, whatever it is that I really am, that left my body. And I could watch as my body fell to the ground. Like I literally saw my body fall to the ground. And I was just kind of floating there. And a couple of things really stood out right away. One was that obviously I'm not this physical body. Like that was just very clear. And the flow of time just felt differently. Like there was a fundamental difference to how time works, and I could literally feel that. I can't really explain it other than to say that time is different than how we perceive it here on Earth. Um, but a couple things happened very quickly. One was my entire life up to that point, and it was shortly before my 6th birthday, so I was about 6 years old at the time. My entire life replayed before me in extreme detail. And I re-experienced every thought, every emotion, every feeling, everything I'd been through. I saw the whole thing again. The only twist was during this replaying, I could also feel the impact I had on other people. I could literally feel how I had made other people feel. And what really stood out was my parents. You know, as a kid, that was who I primarily had interacted with in life, and I could like feel how I had made them feel. And my dad's what stood out for him, he was a good father, but what really stood out was his anger and frustrations with having a baby, changing diapers. You know, when I would cry and scream, it would frustrate him, and I could feel that frustration. And then for my mother, what really stood out was that, you know, she loved me. Her love for me, it really stood out, and I could like feel the importance of that love. It had a weight to it that was significant. Like it really mattered. Um, anyway, when this reliving of my life was over, I thought, wow, that was so short. It felt like life was really really short, and also that I hadn't really done much. You know, like I hadn't really made any significant decisions or done anything major in life. I looked back at my friends, and they were still just playing, doing their thing, and it seemed like what they were doing was really trivial and unimportant. And I noticed in the distance there was a light that it looked kind of like a star, but I instinctively knew it was not a star. It was I can't really explain it, but I had like a subconscious understanding that it was important. Like I just intuitively knew there was something important about this light, but I didn't continue to focus on it. I didn't really understand what it was. So I just kind of continued floating around there in my neighbor's backyard near my body, and I would start to have questions. And as I would have questions, the answers would come to me in pretty extreme detail. Basically, it was like I had experiences I had been through previously that I had forgotten while I was living this life. These experiences came back to me, and like I remembered them. The first major question I had was, "What am I?" Obviously, I'm not this physical body. I'm something different. But what am I? And I could see what I was. I could like see myself, and I was existed as a round orb of light. As a kid, it kind of reminded me of an egg or a bubble, just kind of a round orb of light. That's how I existed, and it was very comfortable to exist like that. It wasn't nothing about this was painful. Honestly, it was preferable to living in a human body. Honestly, it was very comfortable. It was very natural. I knew that I had been like this before. Like there was a familiarity to it that's hard to explain. And then I had more questions. I thought, okay, I'm this round orb of light. Where did I come from? What am I doing in this place? Like, how did this happen? And the experience of how I came to this planet, it like replayed for me. And it started, I was a orb of light or little ball of consciousness. And I was with thousands of other orbs that were just like me. We all looked the same, and we were all in what I would call a sea of light. It was very, very bright. We could see each other and interact with each other, and we were all content and safe and happy. There was no problems, and not only were there no problems, like there could never be any problems. It was all a nice existence. but we didn't have any experience.
In that particular state, being an orb of light, did you have a sense of a relationship with God?
Uh, no, I didn't. I just remember that I was with others who were like me, and that it was kind of like we were friends. But I didn't have a concept of God or of pretty much anything. Um, there was no knowledge, no background information, no experiences. I was completely ignorant. And anyway, we would periodically get some kind of gift would come down to us, and I remember that one time this gift came down. Like there would be one gift for every soul, but one time there was one fewer gifts than there were souls in this group, and so I made the conscious decision. Okay, all these other souls around me, they're just like me. I'm going to give up. Like I'll pass on the gift and I'll let everybody else have a gift because I know they want one of these things, and I don't know what it was, but somehow it like made us a little bit happy. It was kind of like a treat, something like that. And anyway, when the last treat came to the last soul, I was very gently lifted out of this group. The care used to lift me up was really noticeable. Like it was very gentle. And as I was lifted, a consciousness contacted me, like it was like mind to mind communication or telepathic communication. But it was very natural. It was I don't know, it was a very easy way to communicate. And this was obviously a very powerful entity that was contacting me. And it said that it was my creator and that I was very much loved. And what I had done, giving up a gift, giving up something that I wanted for those around me, was very important. And it basically indicated that I was ready to start something. I was ready to begin some kind of experience or journey. It meant that I was at the right point to begin something. And essentially, God, I call my creator, this being that contacted me, God, for simplicity. But he said that he had an absolutely fantastic existence in store for us, that it was really, really great to exist, and that it was just wonderful. And we were going to enjoy it so much, me and all these other souls. But in order for us to properly enjoy this existence, we needed to go through some kind of difficult experience. We needed to gain knowledge and experience and understanding. And but it was going to be a difficult experience, a very brief but very difficult experience. And I asked, well, can't you just change me and make me how I need to be to enjoy my existence? Like, why do I need to go through this difficult experience? And God explained that we were all created with free will, and free will is extremely important. It was like a critical tenet of our creation in the first place. And if God changed us forcibly, it would violate our free will. And so God wasn't going to do that. Essentially, God said that He's loving, compassionate, kind, honest, giving, caring, and that for us to really enjoy our existence, we need to understand that those are good traits to have, and to freely choose those traits for ourselves. We need to freely choose to be good to others. And God was not going to force us to be like that. We would need to learn the benefits of being like that, or the harm of doing the opposite. And anyway, he was absolutely confident that this was a good plan. It's hard to explain how confident he was. It really it was just obvious that he was absolutely confident of this plan. Essentially, from his perspective, the experience we were going to go through was extremely brief, and the benefits we were going to gain were extraordinary. So it was worth it. So I said, okay, well, I guess that sounds reasonable. And God then asked, okay, would you, before you go on this experience, would you like to see my face? And I said, okay, sure. And so my attention, I had been looking at all these other souls I would with, my attention was turned, and I was facing a large sun-like entity. Like it looked kind of like a sun, only it wasn't. And inside this sun were thousands and thousands and thousands of souls. All these little orb-shaped consciousness were all together, and they existed in extreme happiness. I couldn't even explain how happy they were. And a couple of them kind of like came to the surface so they could see me. And when they came to the surface, I could see their face clearly, and they welcomed me into existence. They had been through what I was about to go through. And they were very, very happy that I'd come into existence because I was going to join them someday. And when I did, I would bring something irreplaceable that no other soul could replicate, and it would like increase their happiness a little bit when I was able to join them. So they were very excited about that. And anyway, so God said, "Okay, are you sure you're ready to begin this journey?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm sure." And so like with that, it's like I was shot out, like I was leaving very quickly. I was moving away from God in this scene, and but God was still in contact with me mentally, and we started looking at all these different planets I could go to. There's like thousands and thousands and thousands of different planets, and we were looking at them, and we could look at all this very quickly. Like this wasn't tedious at all, but we went through a whole bunch of different places I might go, and it was all the same situation. I would have been a soul incarnated in a physical body, and I would have been able to get the kind of experience I needed to obtain the spiritual growth I needed. But eventually, we got to Earth, and there was something about this place, this planet. I was absolutely positive this is where I want to go. This is the right fit for me. And God said, "Are you sure? Are you sure this is where you want to go?" And I said, "Yes, I'm sure." And with that, the decision was made, and so that clip or that scene, it answered the question I had initially. So it's like I was then back to floating around my neighbor's backyard. I was just floating there aimlessly, and my question had been answered now. So I had more questions. I then wanted to know, okay, I understand where I came from and how I got to this place, but why am I Aaron Green? How am I this person? Like, how did that happen? Why am I living this life? And so again, something I'd previously been through, but had forgotten while I was living the life, that this whole scene replayed for me. And when this scene started out, I was obviously a much more experienced soul. The first memory I described, I was like a new soul, but now I was like an experienced soul, like I'd been through a lot of stuff. And it started, I was very, I was like a frustrated soul. I had been through something difficult. I was mentally disheveled. I was unhappy with myself. Like I had made some mistakes, and I was really, really upset with myself for making these mistakes. And I had guides that were with me, and the guides were trying to help me. So the guides wanted me to come back to Earth, and initially I was very hesitant. I was like, I'm not going back to Earth. You can't make me. And they said, "You're right. We can't make you go back to Earth, but it'll be good for you to go back to Earth. And if you go back to Earth, you'll be able to help some other souls. Would it be okay if we showed you the souls that you would help if you went back to Earth?" And that kind of triggered something deeper in me, and I was happy about that. And I said, "Okay, you can show me the souls that I would be able to help." And so they showed me. They showed me some souls, and they said, "If you go back to Earth, you'll be able to help them." And that really appealed to me. And somehow that got past my frustrations and my hesitancy of coming back to Earth. And I said, "Okay, maybe we could look at that possibility. Maybe I'd be willing to go back." And so, like the scene shifted. I don't know if we went to another realm or what, but we started looking at the options for me to come back to Earth. And they had a body or a life that they wanted me to live, and they showed me, and I would be a very angry person. This life they wanted me to live, they would have had a very difficult childhood, I think, and they would be an angry person. And somehow that would help me spiritually as I constantly worked against that anger. But I completely rejected that life. I said, "No, there's no way I'm doing that. No." And they respected that. They respected my no. They didn't try to force me or anything. They said, "Okay, well, let's look at some different different options." And so we looked at a family, and we saw the parents, and I took a pretty close look at these parents, and I knew it's safe to say they didn't have any secrets in this situation. I pretty much knew everything about them, their spiritual background, what they were like as parents, what their relationship was like. I had a really good idea what kind of parents they would be. And there was a couple things I liked about them. I thought they would be a good fit for me. I knew I would have an older brother. And so we started looking at, well, what kind of body could I have if I chose these parents? And it was very obvious. This trait really stands out. There's something about hair color that somehow, it's what I remember the best, but it's not the only issue going on here. It was obvious that they had the genes available that they could have a redheaded child. And so I thought, oh, wow, I really liked that. It was like I knew that it was a rare hair color, like the percentages in the world, like that was all real obvious, that the percentages of hair color in the world As a person, you might not know the exact percentages of red hair color in the world, but as a soul, it was obvious that it was rare, it's unusual, and I really liked that. Um, and I wanted to be a girl because, as I understand it, I had hurt people in a past life. I don't know if I killed people or what, but I did something where I hurt people unnecessarily in a past life, and I really, really didn't want to do that again. I had a big aversion to that. Um, but there was something about this redheaded girl. Like the options weren't right for me. It wasn't the right kind of fit. I would have been socially awkward. I wouldn't have been able to get married. It just wasn't quite the right fit for me. So we started looking at boys, and the redheaded options for boys were even there was even fewer. So we started looking at, okay, well, what about brown haired boys? And there was tons and tons of genes available for brown haired boys for this couple, and it became obvious that all these other more important traits were like I could pick what I wanted more easily with a brown haired boy. So I picked brown haired boy. We started looking at looks. I want it to be really, really good looking. And my guide,
ridiculously good looking.
ridiculously good looking. Yes, exactly. Like the best looking guy on the planet. Who wouldn't want that? But that's what I wanted. And my guides basically said, okay, that's an option to these parents. They have the genes for that. You could choose that if you want. But if you choose that, you're going to be kind of arrogant. You're going to essentially, women will treat you differently if you're that good looking, and you're going to end up being too promiscuous. And by too promiscuous, I mean, like, for my level of spiritual development, being extremely promiscuous was not the right fit. It was clear that there's a spiritual downside to being very promiscuous, and that was a deal breaker for me. The downsides just completely outweighed the plus sides to being really good looking. So we backed the attractiveness down. We lowered it down, not to where I was like hideously ugly or anything like that, but a little bit better looking than average. And keep in mind I'm 50 now, so I'm getting I don't look that good anymore, but I looked all right when I was younger. And
hey, easy on that. I'm turning 56 here, brother.
But what I remember picking matched how I looked when I was a younger man. Anyway, so we picked a little bit attractive, but definitely not like the best looking guy on the planet. And then we started looking at intelligence. And again, I wanted to be like the smartest guy on the planet, absolutely brilliant, like an Albert Einstein kind of thing. And my guides, again, they were like, you could pick that if you want, but here's the downside for you to consider. You would become very arrogant. You would look down on other people. You would have trouble relating to others and making friends. And for you would be an atheist. That's how you would develop if you were that intelligent. And so again, the downsides outweighed the plus sides. So we lowered the intelligence down to a smart person, but nothing, no super genius or anything like that. And then, we looked at everything about this body, down to the most intimate detail. I knew exactly what this body was going to be like. And when I got to what I felt like was the right fit for me in terms of all these different attributes, my guide said, okay, this is good, but there's a unintended consequence of the choices you've made. The genes that you're picking, you will have, really bad acne as a teenager. And it was bad enough that they needed to bring it to my attention and get my approval.
So I chose that on purpose?
Well, it was like an unintended
my cousins used to call me Pizza Face, a Boston Royale with extra toppings.
Yeah, you might have, but for me, it was an unintended consequences of all these other choices. And I saw that for 2 years, I would have, really bad acne, like the worst kid in the school kind of thing. Yeah. And it's really amazing that from that perspective, 2 years of really, really terrible acne, it seemed incredibly short. I can't stress enough how short those 2 years seemed to me from a spiritual perspective. And what really stood out also was that it would help me with my spiritual development. Like, it would actually help me grow and become a better soul. And so for that reason, I said, okay, it's all right. We can just stick with this plan. It's okay that I'm going to have horrible acne as a teenager. And then my guide started, they had plans for my life. They showed me brief clips of stuff I had done in previous lives, and they showed me how it would now be played into my current life. And they needed my approval for all these different plans. They couldn't force it on me. It was something I needed to agree to. And the most the most obvious or the easiest one to explain is they showed me in a previous life I had beat up someone else. Like I'd been a big guy and I'd beat up this smaller guy when he didn't deserve it. I was way out of line, and they showed me that scene. And from a spiritual perspective, seeing that, in a whole new light, it was obvious that I had done something wrong, that I didn't need to do that. It was clear that I had gone way too far. So their plan was that, having this thing in a past life, it's kind of like it created an unbalanced equation, where you could say I had written a check and now I had to cash it. And essentially I needed to receive what I had previously given out. Yeah. Or karma. And the plan was that as a teenager, I would have my nose broken, and that would help me. I would receive what I had previously given out, and that would help me with my spiritual growth. And I would learn, hey, it's not good to just beat up people. And they showed me other things I'd done in the past lives. And some of these
things. It's okay if they got it coming. That's what I'm hearing. If they got it coming, it's okay.
I certainly had it coming in this situation. And honestly, what I received compared to what I gave out, it felt like I was given the benefit of the doubt, and I got off kind of light. Honestly, it felt like I was given every benefit of the doubt in balancing out what I'd done in the past and then what happened to me in this life. I felt like I got off very well. Anyway, they showed me other stuff I'd done in the past lives, and some of this stuff I can't really repeat. It's I don't want to share all this stuff. It would make me look horrible. I've done horrible things in past lives is what I'm getting down to. And they showed me how some of this stuff is going to play into this life, but they needed my approval. Like they couldn't just force this on me. They needed my approval. But since this was like baggage from a past life, in order to get rid of it and allow me to move up to higher levels of spiritual happiness, I needed to go through this experience so I could learn what I needed to learn. And I guess balance out the karma, or however you want to put that. So I agreed to a number of different things. One thing I agreed to was to have my shoulder broken. I dislocated my right shoulder as a teenager. And then when I was in my, 30s, I dislocated and broke my left shoulder. And both of those injuries were planned out, and they were directly related to how I had mistreated people in the past lives. And so I agreed to a number of different things related to past lives. And then there was other stuff they wanted me to agree to. They had relationships, friends that I would have, people I would know. They had stuff planned out, and they wanted me to agree to some of these different relationships in life and some of the stuff that was going on. And so I agreed to a number of different things. And like they could seamlessly integrate my life with all these other lives behind the scenes. Like it was really easy for them to handle that. But I agreed to all kinds of different little things here and there where other people would help me or I would help somebody else. A lot of this stuff was planned. And they were very clear with me that, yes, you have this plan, but you still have free will. Like you can change the plan while you're living life. You're not like trapped by any of this. You still have free will and can, make changes here and there. This planning didn't interrupt my ability to have free will while living life. But when we had all these decisions made, my guides wanted me to take one final look at life from a holistic view where I could see everything that I would be doing in this life or what the plan was. And I agreed to it. They said, "Are you sure you agree to this life?" They wanted to make sure that I was in agreement. And I agreed. And then it's like the decision was made. And that answered my question. And so I was back to floating around my neighbor's yard. And I had one more big question I wanted to know, because that had answered my question. I wanted to know, okay, well, what was I doing between different lives? Like, what was I doing like before this life and in different lives, like in the spiritual realm? What had I been doing? And so I was shown brief clips of what I had been doing between lives in previous situations. And I'll start with the worst and move to the best. The worst that I was shown, I guess I'd been a violent person and hurt a lot of people in life. And in the spiritual realm, I looked like a horrible monster. And I was with, I guess, hundreds or thousands of others who looked just like me. And we were all the same. We were all extremely violent. All we wanted to do was hurt each other and dominate them. And it was just a horrible battle where we just constantly fought with each other, and no
Was
matter
that on a
how
different was that on a different planet, or was that still on Earth, or do you know?
I don't know where it was. It looked like a rocky plain. It looked kind of like how you think of as Mars, except it was darker. It was just
Could
a.
it have been hell?
I view it as a realm of hell. Yeah, um, we were absolutely miserable. We just fought endlessly. Um, we had no knowledge of the past or hope for a future. It was just we were
Sounds like
burning
hell.
with hatred. Yeah, it sounds like hell. Yeah, we were burning with hatred. No matter how badly we would injure each other, the injuries would quickly heal. And we just fought like that and fought like that. And eventually, I something like snapped in me, and I stopped fighting with those around me. And I was like, okay, I don't want to hurt these others anymore. And I tried to help my neighbor. I like actually tried to help him up. And when I did that, it was like a being of light or an angel who was above swooped down and pulled me up out of this horrible fight. And I asked him, "Why did you pull me out of here? Why did you take me away from that?" And he said, "When I stopped wanting to hurt other people, or when I stopped wanting to hurt others, I didn't belong there anymore." And he went on to tell me that all of the souls that were in there fighting with each other, they would all leave when they were ready. Like none of them were going to be stuck there forever.
So not really eternity.
Not eternity at
Probably
all.
feels like it when you're in it, though.
Yeah, and also it's like a timeless. There's a timelessness to it that I can't explain. Here we have time, but here in these spiritual realms, time doesn't work the same. So I consider it to be eternal, even though it doesn't last forever. Um, but I saw another realm I had been in where I was with other souls, and we were just kind of standing around in darkness, and we were unhappy, but we weren't miserable. We were very confused and like distrustful of each other, and kind of mildly unhappy, but not miserable at all. But there was higher level souls or beings of light that were going around. They were like trying to help us, and we were all very mistrustful. We had a really hard time accepting that someone would be there to help us, because we had been kind of like selfish people who wouldn't help others. And so this idea that these beings of light were there to help us was kind of like a foreign concept. But eventually, I agreed to their help, and they helped me transition away from that realm, I think, into another life. And I saw this other realm I had been in where it looked kind of like Earth. It had buildings and like a dirt road, and the buildings were kind of ugly and decrepit, and the sky was dark. And the me and the other beings there were unhappy. We weren't miserable, but we were unhappy. And again, there was an angel or being of light that came, and he explained I didn't need to stay like that, that I could transition to much more happy realms. And he actually showed me, somehow he was able to open my vision and allow me to see one of these higher level realms, where I saw beings that were extraordinarily happy. I couldn't even explain it. And I wanted that happiness for myself. And this being of light said, well, you can get there, but you need to change yourself. And he was going to help me to go through the process of changing myself so I could fit into these higher levels of heaven. And then I saw a couple happy realms as well. One of the realms looked kind of like Earth. It had buildings and roads, and a lamppost really stands out to me. And there was, souls there that they were, it was like they were living life. They were still doing the same kind of stuff they had done in life. But they were really, really happy. It was like a much, much better version of Earth. But it was like I quickly recognized that this was kind of a midway realm, and so I didn't stay there because I wanted to transition to like an even happier level. So I quickly left that realm, and then I saw some other realm that I had been in at some point where it was like a city of light. Like the buildings were translucent, the beings were translucent. It was all made of light. It was absolutely beautiful. Everyone there was ridiculously happy, kind and loving, and just great people. Or I'm sorry, great souls, and just an absolutely happy city of light. I'm not sure what else to call it. And that kind of like, it's like that answered my question. And again, I was back to just kind of floating around aimlessly in my neighbor's backyard. And I had the realization at that point that, wow, when this life is over, I get to transition back to one of the happy realms. Like somehow I knew that. And I was so happy about that. I was just absolutely thrilled. I was ready to just leave everything behind and just go to this realm. I remember like I had friends there, and our connection was really intense, and I was just so happy about it. But like as soon as I had that realization, this being of light, I guess he was an angel, he came at me very rapidly, just very quickly. And the beauty of this being, I couldn't even describe how beautiful he was, but just absolutely, absolutely beautiful. And he said, "You are not to leave your body." And it's like, bam, I was back in my body. And I stood up. I didn't have any breathing problem anymore. I felt fine. At that point, my brother had come to check on me. And I was really confused. And I walked straight home. I tried to explain it to my mother, but as a 6 year old, there's no way I could explain this stuff. Like I couldn't explain it at all at that point in time. And but I would think about this experience every day for like 6 months, like daily. I would think about it, try to understand what I had been through. And after roughly 6 months, I got contacted by my guides, and they basically explained to me that this experience I had was interfering with my ability to live life as intended. And they wanted
Contacted how? Like in a dream?
no, it was like mind to mind communication, telepathic. But I knew exactly who it was because I recognized
Sure.
that
Were you
communication
awake
from
when that
before.
happened though?
Yeah, I was awake, just kind of walking through my house, and they contacted me and said, "We need to, we need your permission to change to hide this experience from you. It's interfering with you living life. Um, but if you agree, we'll make changes to your life plan that'll prepare you so you can that you can handle this experience you had." They also said that because I knew about God, like because I had seen all this stuff, I could never develop faith. Like I had knowledge, which isn't the same as faith, and the faith is really valuable. It's really
There's
important.
a there's a bit in the Bible about that. I read the Bible cover to cover when I was like 12, and then I reread just the New Testament a year or two later, and I just started picking it up again recently. And there's a line I couldn't tell you which chapter and verse, but there's a line that "Blessed are those that don't know but believe."
Right,
I'm sure I'm messing that line up, but that's the gist of it. So there's something about not knowing but believing that's a good thing. And, and that's a bit of knowledge. Like I know that's true, but I can't tell you how I know, or I don't know how to articulate it or why that is. But that
right,
is that is biblical as well.
right. Yeah, well, that's what they directly told me. So I agreed to their plan, and my life plan changed to be more difficult, but to prepare me to handle all this information. And I didn't think about my experience anymore. I had my nose broken when I was, I think, 12. I had my shoulder dislocated, and then when I was older, it was broken, dislocated. And then when I was about 36, I was reading a Newsweek magazine article uh, about Dr. Eben Alexander. He's a near-death experiencer, a neurosurgeon, and he wrote about his experience. And somehow reading about his experience triggered for me the recall of all these memories that I had from when I was a kid. But between the time I was 6 and 36, I didn't have any memory of this near-death experience. So I got all my memories back, and I spent years trying to understand, uh, what I had seen and make sense of it. And so here I am, I guess about 13 years later, and I just try to, share my experience with anybody who's interested and explain what I saw.
Do I ever have questions? um, have you had visitations from guides since then?
Not that I know of. I feel like we have guides that are constantly trying to help us, but I've never had that clear, direct, obvious communication like I did as a kid.
Do you consider yourself an intuitive person, a person that goes by gut feel?
Sometimes I wouldn't describe myself that way, but I think sometimes I'm like that. I'm an electrical engineer, so I'm more of a
I was just going to say,
logical
being an
thinker.
engineer is the opposite of
Right,
intuitive.
right,
That's just not how an engineer's brain works at
right,
all.
right,
But wouldn't that be interesting, though, if you're had both of those traits, both
right,
the analytical, process-oriented mind of an engineer and that gut feeling where it's like, I can't tell you why I'm going to go right instead of left, but I'm going right.
right, right. Yeah, I'm definitely more the engineer type, but I guess I have a little bit of the intuition sometimes.
Okay. So let's see what I can find here for questions. I wrote out a lot.
Okay.
The beings that came down a few times that you had experiences with. would you describe them as angels? Did they have wings? Like, can you give even a general description of them?
Uh, yeah. So I would describe them as angels. They didn't have a name tag, so it's kind of confusing about what they really were. But they were translucent, and they had a physical form, kind of like a body, arms and legs and a head, that kind of thing. But the really interesting part to me about their translucent nature is that we have surface features that you can see, and there's a beauty to that. You can understand someone if they're happy or sad or whatever. But by being translucent, like you can see into them, and they had internal features that had their own beauty to them, and
Wow.
you could like if you knew what you were doing, you could know them at a much deeper uh, from a much deeper meaningful way than you can just from the surface level stuff. And so just to look at them, like them more intimately in a way that's not possible here on Earth. Like their internal characteristics as well as their external characteristics. And there was a deep beauty to that, and a connection that's like instantaneous, that it doesn't really translate here on Earth, but it's really neat in the spiritual realms. And then they were all like, they seemed very powerful, and like they were at a much higher level than whatever I was working at.
How did these experiences alter, change, or shape your view of religion?
Um, so my take on religion these days is it's a nice place to start, but
Mm.
as you as you grow and you learn more and you have a deeper understanding. They tend to act like a box, and they try to hold you in there. And if you want to have a bigger understanding than your religion, the religion's going to try to hold you in the box and prevent you from that deeper understanding. So I feel like I've reached a point where my understanding has kind of grown beyond what uh, my religious background is, and I kind of need to I don't want to stop that growth, and so I've kind of had to step away from my religious beliefs and embrace a deeper uh, knowledge and a deeper understanding.
Did you get a sense that one faith, one here on earth, is a better path to God than another?
Uh, I guess the short answer is yes, and that faith is love, or that religion is love. Being good
Mm.
to others, kindness, compassion, honesty, integrity, service, generosity, all these traits. Like that's the religion that really does the most for you.
Well, that sounds like Christianity to me, of what
Okay.
it's supposed to be anyway. Of course, it's been perverted uh, nine
Right.
ways
Yeah.
to Sunday. But if you actually read the words of Christ, and that's where I'm a red letter Christian.
Okay.
If Christ said it, I pay attention to it. Other than that, meh, maybe. I don't know.
Right.
But if Christ said it, is probably good advice. And everything that you're describing is what a red letter Christian would subscribe to, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. I agree with what you just said. I share that same thought.
So, of all these different planets that you experienced, do you have sort of a memory or an inkling of what the bodies looked like that you could have like? Were they all humans, or were they like
Right.
different kinds of, like, would you have been a hippopotamus in one? Like, like, what do these things look like? Star Trek kind of stuff, or does
Yeah.
everybody look like a human all
Unfortunately,
over the?
unfortunately, I have no memory of what the beings looked like on other planets.
I was
I,
hoping
ha-
for Avatar.
I have heard from other experiencers that there's a wide variety. I think the best explanation I heard was from Howard Storm, and he said
Hmm.
there was all kinds of different beings, some that look kind of like us and some that look completely different. And that kind of fits with what I would expect, is that there's all different kinds of beings out there, that they have a soul living in a physical body, and but their looks are really different than us. That's my understanding, but my experience didn't answer that question.
Does the cycle of incarnation ever end? Did you get a sense of that?
I definitely got the sense that it ends. That there's a number of people that I will know in this life that it's like their last lifetime. Um, it seems like we've got a number of lives, maybe, I don't know, 5, 10, 20, 50, but it's not infinite. Like we don't just keep coming back here over and over endlessly. Uh,
Thank
as
God.
my as I as I understand it,
Because I'm a little pooped out.
as I understand it, we need to develop we need to be like a basically we need to get to where we're a decent human being. Like we embrace all these godly characteristics, like we freely choose them, and we have to have overcome any negative karma we have. We can't just come to this planet and make it a worse place and then leave. Like we got to fix the mistakes that we've made in the past and make the world a better place and love
Can you
our
balance
neighbor.
out that karma in the same life, like all the horrible shit I did when I was younger? That I can I balance that out in this life as I'm doing it through repentance and acts of service?
Yeah, I think you could probably do a lot. I mean, I certainly don't know
I
what you've
hope
done
so.
in your past,
I'm trying,
but
man.
I think that's that's the best approach is to try to make the world a better place. To recognize, hey, we've screwed up some stuff in the past. To try to make amends for it. I think that goes a really long way in the spiritual realms.
Well, I got a sense that this is either my last life or second last,
Okay,
and I seem to remember when you and I were talking off air. I said, "Well, I don't know what I'm going to share when we do the show, but I'll share this.
okay,
I have a memory, at least I think I have a memory. It very well could have been a dream, but I think I have a memory of redoing my soul contract, of that negotiation that you described, because I was adopted at birth. And something about that did a control alt delete on the plan,
right,
and I think that my brother was supposed to get this body, but instead he was born 3 years later in a different body. Same mother. I found him when I was in my 30s.
okay,
But that's sort of the sense I have. But I have a memory, at least it feels like a memory of being in the cradle and going, well, we didn't see that one coming. So now you're adopted. We're making a new plan, or at least making
right,
amendments to the original plan. And I remember that in not in specifics, but in thematically what the plan would be. And the idea was, I remember the soul guide urging me to break it over 2 lifetimes. And
okay,
me being me, said, nah, go big or go home. Let's get it all done in this one. He's like, dude, like that's gonna be rough. Like if we get do it all in one lifetime, like buddy, it's a ride. And I said, no, I think I can balance it out. I think I can balance it out.
right.
And despite the advice, that's what we did. And I tell you, my life has unraveled or unfolded rather, very much like the deal that I remember making.
Right.
Now, is that did that actually happen? Is it a who knows, right? Memory is a tricky thing, but I feel like it's true.
Well, I mean, what you're saying fits perfectly with the renegotiation I remember after my experience, where it's like there's some back and forth, but the guides know what they're talking about. They're trying to help me, and they made an edit to my plan. It's just like what you're saying.
Yeah, well, it's how I remember it, and I've never talked about it on the show before, so this is the first time. So all my longtime listeners that have been listening to me for 7 years,
Okay.
hope you don't think I'm a kook, but I call and I think I have a couple of memories of this particular entity, but I call him the clipboard angel because wasn't it's just very matter of fact, you know, and
Right.
seemed like there's a clipboard and a plan and just very matter of fact, and wasn't mean or loving or evil. It was just matter of fact.
Right. Down to
And
business.
yeah, down to business. And I remember a
Right.
sense of frustration with me wanting to do it my way. It's like,
Right.
dude, you're making a mistake. I'm like, then I'll make the mistake. Let's do it.
Right. Right.
And it seems to have worked out though.
Okay.
Um, there's a lot of videos talking about this planet being a soul trap by some beings known as archons, and it's a trick to keep going because they, whatever the negative experiences are that you experience in life, fear and anger, that is somehow a cosmic food for them.
Right.
So that's why they keep tricking us to come back to this place where we feel pain and fear and aggravation because that negative frequency is something that they feed off of. Did you get any information that has any relation to that at all?
So yeah, I've certainly heard those theories before. What I saw was that God's in charge, God's running the show, and God is out for our best interests. Trying to help us develop. and prepare us for an extremely happy existence. So I don't think there's any negative beings that are running this show. Uh, it could be somebody saw something like that because that's helped them. It's going to help them with their development or whatever. But no, what I saw was God's running the show. This is for our benefit. We're all going to, we're not going to reincarnate forever. We're not stuck here. We don't. We only come back with our approval and our agreement. And so, no one's forced to come back. And so, what I saw was different than that kind of description.
Talking about choosing whether you're going to be male or female, and it could be either, and it's all about the different lessons. That is fascinating to me because I've been wondering if there's something about that state of being where we don't even have a gender because we're a ball of
Right,
consciousness.
right,
If somehow that's we are engaged in some sort of spiritual awakening today because of all the gender confusion. There's people that with pronouns that want to be plural and don't identify as male or female. And
right.
I'm thinking about that a lot. Like, is there an upside to that? I wonder. Like, is this starting to be the other side bleeding into this side where gender just doesn't matter? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts. It definitely did not seem like my soul had a gender. Like
Mm.
it seemed like I've lived lives of both genders, and I'm sure God has made this perfect. And there's people that their gender is not as black and white as the traditional male female approach. And I think that's deliberate. I think there's some sort of spiritual benefit to those people for having that kind of experience. And I don't have any deep answers. Only I just try to be good to everybody. And if someone has kind of some kind of gendered thing that's a little bit different than mine, so be it. I can still treat them like a good person and be nice to them as I can.
When you made your life plan, you said that there was going to be souls that you would be able to help.
Right.
So as you've gone through your life, have you met those souls? Have you recognized them as like, oh, I know you. You're one of those souls I was supposed to help.
Absolutely, I definitely
Really?
have. And a couple of them really stand out as interesting. Like some of the stuff I saw in my experience, and remember, I got these memories back 13 years ago. One
Okay.
example is a guy at work. I got this memory back, and it's like I remember this guy from my experience. Like, but we hardly knew each other, right? We hardly talked. We just worked in the same building. But then there's some reorganization, some shift around, and then bam, I'm sitting next to this guy for like 3 years, and it's like, okay, well, okay, now it makes sense. And another guy, something I saw in my experience, I'm like, I don't understand. It doesn't really make sense. And then 12 years later, something happens. He makes some choices, and it's like, oh my God, now it makes perfect sense what I saw. So yeah, a lot of these things that I was shown before my life and relationships I would have and events I agreed to, yeah, a whole bunch of that I've seen it come to pass and happen just like my guides planned for it to.
That's fantastic. I've often thought that like, I had a really rough relationship with my dad that only cleared up
Okay,
the last few years of his life, right? And I am not bitter about it because anything that I would have endured, even though some of it I'm sure was a little over the top and that probably wasn't necessary, but it still makes me a better person and it makes me
right.
strive to do better with my boys. But I wonder if part of that is me trying to help him to develop because he was a better person to
Right.
me at the last few years. Like I saw it was a market change. It's like he had an awakening or an enlightenment and he made a real effort to do better. And he did. And I'm so grateful for those last few years.
Yeah, good.
And but I wonder if like we were helping each other develop.
Yeah, I think absolutely. Some of the agreements I made about life, they weren't for my benefit; they were for someone else's benefit. And
Mm.
likewise, I witnessed, other souls agreeing to some kind of difficulty or hardships, specifically for my benefit. It goes both ways. And we're all here together. We're helping each other. You might help this person, and then some other person might help you. A lot of this stuff is planned out, and it's more than just ourselves. We're here to help others as well.
I'm curious if you have some thoughts or if you're able to sort of unpack the spiritual debt created by being promiscuous?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily call it a debt, but there's like different spiritual levels, and our soul is progressing upwards to higher and higher levels, and those higher and higher levels correlate with more loving uh, thought processes and more loving actions. And being like really promiscuous, it's just not in tune with like the really higher levels of spiritual development. Uh, I think a monogamous type relationship is probably the highest level of spiritual development. And because as a soul, I was interested in my spiritual development. I wasn't necessarily focused on my physical pleasures. And as a soul, it was clear that just being really promiscuous, it's not in tune with the higher levels of spiritual development. And that's really where I wanted to get. And so that's where I kind of try to steer my life towards that.
I think there's misconceptions on the concept of sin. Sin, I think the direct translation I've heard it said is just simply missing the mark.
Right.
And I think that's probably right. So the sin of being promiscuous to me, because I used to be when I was younger, and that's probably the greatest source of shame and regret that I carry with me,
Okay.
was all the broken hearts. Some guys, they brag about how many women they've been with and whatnot, and I do not feel that at all. It's more shame and regret. But I believe that the reason is that if you are focused on the needs of the flesh, you can't suck and blow at the same time. Like you can't be just running around giving yourself pleasure through sex or
Right.
even skiing or riding your motorcycle or bungee jumping. Like those are all fun, but if that's all you're focused on, that's low level. The
Right.
higher level is service. Like, who can I
Right.
help? Who can I lift? Can I make somebody smile today? Whose life can I improve today? And if that's your focus, that's a much higher level. It's very narcissistic to just be running around looking for the next buzz,
Right.
like addiction. It's a as long as you're an addict, that is a temporary narcissism in some ways, where you're just looking after what you need to do to get through the day. And being focused on sexual partners is the same thing. You're just thinking about you and your wants and needs, and you're not thinking about the consequences. You're certainly not thinking about others, and you're not concerned with the downside and the broken hearts. And you just focused on what you want, on being selfish and self-centered. That's how I've been able to unpack it over the years. Anyway, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I basically agree with everything you're saying. Uh, my take on it is in terms of development and different levels, and uh, being promiscuous or focusing only on pleasurable things, that's kind of a low level activity. And to
Yeah.
really move into higher levels of activity or higher levels of spiritual development, you need to be more focused on loving others. How can I serve other people? How can I help somebody? Give someone a smile for the day. Whatever it is. If you focus more on that, that's more in tune with a higher level of spiritual development. And it's like there's nothing wrong with being at a lower level, but it's not, you're not as happy in the
Just not
spiritual
helpful.
realms. You're not as helpful to others, and
Yeah.
you're not enjoying the same level of spiritual happiness that a soul that's more focused on helping others. They're going to enjoy a much more pleasurable existence in the afterlife than a soul that's only focused on how can I get the next fun experience or next sexual conquest or whatever.
And the consequences aren't something you have to wait to the afterlife to figure out. I see it in this life.
Right.
I have many friends that are very, very wealthy, and the ones that are wealthy but they choose a life of service,
Hmm.
they're content and happy, and they have a life that they're happy about. But those that are just focused on entertainment, I think is the right word. Whether that entertainment being sexual partners or the vehicles in their garage, it's just entertainment.
Right.
they're not happy.
Right.
They're not happy because their focus is themselves and not others. Um, it's taken me a long time to sort of figure out the right people for me, like what's the right group for me. And it's really simple now. It's my people are the people that help others, and that's their focus.
Right.
And it's not about climbing the social ladder or building their social media accounts, or the clicks or the likes or the status, or the educational, um, socioeconomic status. It's who can I help?
Right.
Who can I help? And how can I be a better person today? What lessons do I need to not just learn, but you haven't learned, if you knew it, you'd do it. So there's, oh yeah, yeah, I know that. Oh, do you know that? Are you incorporating that into your life? If you're not doing it, then you're aware that that's something that you should do. That's not the same as knowing it, because if you knew it, you'd do it. So what are the people that actually incorporate the right lessons into their life that focus on lifting others? And it's not a lot. It's not a lot of folks, but I find that those are the ones that I resonate with the most.
Right. Right. Yeah. A couple things to I'd like to point out there. One is that I think there's an irony that the stuff a lot of people think is going to bring them happiness, like tons of sexual partners or a
Yeah.
Ferrari or whatever, it turns out that doesn't really bring you the kind of happiness you expect it to.
No,
And the stuff that
it's
actually
empty.
does bring people happiness is connecting with other people, relationships, helping others. Like those bring a genuine happiness to people that the Ferrari is never going to bring. And
Do you know
then
who? Do you know who Dan Bazilarian is?
I do, yes, yes,
Yeah. So for those that don't know, this guy made all of his money gambling. So he's living the life, Hugh Hefner kind of life. He's got like the 150-foot yachts or
right,
whatever they are, and full of women and just sex all day with numerous dozens of women all the time. And it is the saddest, most empty life that I could imagine. And yet our society says, oh, hey, if you can become a Dan Bazilarian, then, well, that's, you have made it. You've succeeded. Well, I disagree. And I'm not
right.
crapping on the guy. I'm not wagging my finger at him. I just, ew, gross.
Yeah, he
I feel bad for him because that's a lost soul.
well, I heard, I don't know if it was an interview or something I read, but he was talking about that, how he was living a life, he was with tons of women all the time, and how he was miserable. Like it was not
Yeah.
making him happy at all. And he actually described that in some kind of interview. And I thought that was
Wow. I'd
very
love to see that
interesting.
one. Well, you're drinking from an empty cup. You're drinking from
Right.
an empty cup. A friend of mine talked to me privately about visiting a prostitute once and engaging in those services. And he says it's the most empty, vapid thing I've ever done. Like he's like, ugh, that was
Right.
just wrong. And that's what it boils down to. You're drinking from an empty cup. And as long as you're chasing materialism and social status, uh, you're just drinking from an empty cup. It will never satisfy you.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't satisfy you in this physical world. And then also it's not helping you with your spiritual development in the
No.
next realm. It's just getting you nowhere. It's and ironically, to help you both in this life and in the spiritual realms, just be a good person, be good to other people. It really, it'll bring you happiness both here and there.
Yeah. Put others first. And if you can't do that, well, you're a young soul or an undeveloped soul or whatever it is. And okay,
Right.
you,
Right.
when you're on the other side, you'll be shown all this in your life review
Yeah.
and be like, "Ugh, here you go.
Right.
And that's kind of the beauty of the psychedelic experiences. I've used magic mushrooms several times, but I've never had one of these wild breakthrough experiences that are somewhat similar to an NDE by their
Right.
description. I've never had that, unfortunately. I don't think I'm allowed to have that. I think the cosmos is like, nope, not for you. You just got to believe, you can't know. I'm like, oh, all right.
Right.
And that's so I believe that restriction is on me. But it's the same idea, though. Those that do these psychedelic experiences, and in the world of trauma recovery, I highly recommend them. It kills the ego, because the ego is the false self. The ego is the part of your psychology that just helps you navigate this world and get through it and have a little bit of ambition and just be a human in this particular reality. But there is no ego on the other side. It doesn't exist. So um, doing a psychedelic journey gives you a glimpse of that. This is who you actually are. This ball of consciousness. This is what you
Hmm.
are. You don't have a soul. You are a soul.
Right.
And it, it, and the brain is a filter. It's a restrictor. It's a governor. It's not the generator.
Right.
Those two basic things. Aaron, I am super grateful of you being with me here today. Is there anything else that we should have talked about or mentioned that we haven't?
No, I guess, there's lots of parts of my experience and other NDEs that I think are very interesting, and people can learn all they want about the spiritual realms. But I think the most important thing to mention that I brought back with me is, look, everybody has a concept of what it is to be a good person, to be a decent human being, to help others. If you focus on that to whatever degree you're able, you'll be glad you did. It'll help you with your spiritual development, just to be kind, compassionate, loving, honest, giving, generous, that kind of stuff. It really matters, and it's important. And I hope if you see an opportunity to help someone else, that anyone listening, that they'll try to take that opportunity.
Absolutely beautiful. Thank you, brother. I
Yeah, thank you.
appreciate you and your time and sharing your story. It's just beautiful. And for my audience, I hope you get something out of it. Whether you think it's woo woo or not, there's got to be a lesson worth learning somewhere in this conversation that we had. I believe it's true. And I've had my own experiences that, but for me, it's belief and faith. It's not knowledge.
Right.
And if it's either constructive or it's destructive. So the things we talked about today, can you see that being constructive in your life? Then maybe adopt it. Maybe take these lessons and make them part of your life. Or maybe it was just entertaining and interesting. But either way, thank you so much for joining me today. Aaron, stay on the line and I'll close out. You're listening to Operation Tango Romeo, the trauma recovery podcast for veterans, first responders, and their families. If you found any value whatsoever, even if it was just a little bit entertaining, share like the sugar bear, because sharing is caring, and it helps get the good word out. You might save a life just by sharing this show. It's the easiest, nice thing that you can do all week. Thank you, everybody, and thanks for joining. Like, follow, subscribe. It helps me out a lot.